Hey, hope everybody's doing well. So, I've been wanting to do this video for, I don't know, a good 2 to 3 weeks now. And I didn't get around to doing it because I ended up buying, well, my thing was I wanted, I was like, hey, I'm going to buy me a, high end, semi high end, webcam or whatever. I did. And, I mean, the video was on hit. Great. But when I went to, when I went to use the software to record the video because my goal was to share my computer screen as I'm talking, so you guys can kind of read along with certain things. And then I was gonna show certain videos and things like that. But the software that I was using in order to record the video and share my screen and all that, it was like AP calculus. I was like, what the helly? I mean, it was pretty it was just a learning curve, I'll say that. Now, I'm not saying I couldn't got it. It was just like I would have had to focus and take time on it, and I just didn't have the time to fool with it like that. So found another program, and I was recording the video, did about 30 minutes of it, and then I started watching it to check it out, and the video was like the audio was lagging, so the audio and the video wasn't syncing like that. It's like when you're watching a movie and the lips is moving, but the audio is, back a couple of seconds or whatever types thing. So I was like, all right, cool. So, and the reason why, and basically just to keep it a buck, I got an 8 gig laptop, and I guess if I'm, trying to step it up, using programs like that and, doing more content or whatever, I need to upgrade my laptop to a good 16 gigs, so that'll be solid. But I actually ended up, and technically I really wouldn't have to do that. It was specifically with that program because I looked up a few things and I actually think I got one where I can actually just use my current laptop. But at the end of the day, I was just like, I'm gonna go on and do the video. This is more important to just get my message out there that I'm trying to put out there, right? And but either way, just not to babble too long. The thing is, I wanted to do a video because I feel like we were just getting hit, you know, recently for sure, with a lot of propaganda. There's been a lot of propaganda coming at us, and um, to throw it back. So I did a video like for Black History Month. You know what I'm saying? Just talking to the people, and I was just like, you know what, with all this like propaganda coming out, I feel like I need to do another video. You know what I'm saying? Talking to the community, talking to my folks. You know what I'm saying? Um, just because again, like all the propaganda that we getting out there as far as like, hey, black on black crime, the black community, all black violence, all these things that we just keep, we keep just seeing, you know what I'm saying, on social media just repeatedly. And I'm like, wait, I know way too many black people doing incredible things. Way too many. Just, you know what I'm saying? To let that be the narrative. Like, uh, no, no, we can't just roll with that. We can't just roll with that. And so, you know, I want to, regardless if it's only one person, you know what I'm saying? I want to be able to make sure certain people, because some people, they just don't have the knowledge. You know what I'm saying? So what happens is when you constantly hear that, you know what I'm saying? You constantly hear that, you start to, psychologically, it starts to mess with you and how you feel about yourself sometimes, and especially your community. You know what I'm saying? Because some people may be like, well, I'm not like that, and that well, maybe it's right that we're this or we're that, and and it's just like you uh, not having all the information will get you sometimes to feel like that. And I'm not, you know what I'm saying? Because I have a little bit, I have a little bit more information. I'm not saying more than the next person, you know what I'm saying, but more than somebody who could end up being psychologically broken. I can't be psychologically broken because I have the information. But um, again, like I said, I know way too many of us doing incredible things, and um, so I just want to discuss a few things with you guys. Now, this is obviously not a real estate video, not a business video, but again, it was just imperative for me to put the info out there, right? And it's gonna be a pretty long video. I might have to, chop this up and do it over a few days, because it's just a lot of information that I want to discuss. So, but I'll get into the first thing. So, bear with me. All right. So, basically, here's the first thing I want to go over, and this is a report that came out from Brennan Center. They, wrote a large article. Is going over pretty much. This article is from, I think it was 2020. However, they do detail a report that was even older, from 2000. The main report that they go over is the one that came out in 06, which I know that was almost 20 years ago. I know this article is 5 years ago, but the thing is, it's gonna tie into a lot of stuff that I'm gonna talk about here pretty soon, right? But if any of you guys don't know, there was a article or an assessment that came out from the FBI as far as white supremacy groups and far right militancy in law enforcement, right? So I'm gonna go through a few of the points here. So, all right. So racial disparities have long pervaded every stop of the criminal justice process, from police stops, searches, arrests, shootings, and other use of force to charging decisions, wrongful convictions, and sentences. As a result, many have concluded that a structural or institutional bias against people of color, Black, shaped by long-standing racial, economic, and social inequality or inequities, infects the criminal justice system. These systematic inequities can also instill implicit bias, unconscious prejudices that favor in groups and stigmatize out groups among individual law enforcement officials, influencing their day-to-day actions while interacting with the public. All right, police reforms often imposed after incidents of racist misconduct or brutality have focused on addressing these unconscious manifestations of bias. The U.S. Department of Justice, for example, has required implicit bias training as part of consent decrees it imposes to root out disciplinary practices in law enforcement agencies. Such training measures are designed to help law enforcement officers recognize these unconscious biases in order to reduce their influence on police behavior. These reforms, while well-intentioned, leave unaddressed an especially harmful form of bias which remains entrenched within law enforcement: explicit racism. Explicit racism in law enforcement takes many forms, from membership or affiliation with violent white supremacist or far-right militant groups, to engage in racially discriminatory behavior toward the public or law enforcement colleagues, to making racist remarks and sharing them on social media. While it is widely acknowledged that racist officers subsist within police departments around the country, federal, state, and local governments are doing far too little to proactively identify them, report their behavior to prosecutors who might unwittingly rely on their testimony in criminal cases, or protect the diverse communities they are sworn to serve. In 2017, the FBI reported that white supremacists posed a persistent threat of lethal violence that has produced more fatalities than any other category of domestic terrorists since 2000. Alarmingly, internal FBI policy documents have also warned agents assigned to domestic terrorism cases that the white supremacist and anti-government militia groups they investigate often have active links to law enforcement officials. Got it? So when they're, investigating domestic terrorism cases and white supremacist anti-government militia groups, they often have active links to law enforcement officials. The harms that armed law enforcement officers affiliated with violent white supremacist and anti-government militia groups can inflict on American society could hardly be overstated. Yet, despite the FBI's acknowledgement of the links between law enforcement and these suspected terrorist groups, the Justice Department has no national strategy designed to identify white supremacist police officers or to protect the safety and civil rights of the communities they patrol. All right. All right. So in a June 2019 hearing before the House Committee on Oversight and Reform, Rep. William Lacey Clay asked Michael McGarity, the FBI's Assistant Director for Counterterrorism, whether the Bureau remained concerned about white supremacist infiltration of law enforcement since the publication of the 2006 assessment. McGarity indicated he had not read the 2006 assessment. All right, so that's Michael McGarity. Looks like he was the guy that was, what was his title again? He was the FBI Assistant Director for Counterterrorism. And this looks like Mr. Lacey Clay, the guy that was asking him about that. So when asked more generally about the issue, McGarity said he would be suspect of white supremacist police officers, but that their ideology was a First Amendment protected right. The 2006 assessment addresses this concern, however, correctly summarizing Supreme Court precedent on the issue. Although the First Amendment's freedom of association provision protects an individual's right to join a white supremacist group for the purposes of lawful activity, the government can limit the employment opportunities of group members who hold sensitive public sector jobs, including jobs within law enforcement, when their memberships would interfere with their duties. I mean, why would it not interfere with their duties? But anyway, more importantly, the FBI's 2015 counterterrorism policy, which McGarity was responsible for implementing, indicates not just that members of law enforcement might hold white supremacist views, but that FBI domestic terrorism investigations have often identified active links between the subjects of these investigations and law enforcement officials. Its proposed remedy is stunningly inadequate, however. The guide simply instructs agents to use the silent hit feature of the Terrorism Screening Center watch list so that police officers searching for themselves or their white supremacist associates could not ascertain whether they were under FBI scrutiny. So I guess that's if you're looking in their system to see if, hey, you're under investigation, you won't see anything. Or if they know, okay, hey, you're a part of whatever organization, you won't know that that organization or what have you is, being investigated. While it is important to protect the integrity of FBI terrorism investigations and the safety of law enforcement personnel, Congress has also tasked the FBI with protecting the civil rights of American communities, often targeted with discriminatory stops, searches, arrests, and brutality at the hands of police officers. The issue in these cases isn't ideology, but law enforcement connections to subjects of active terrorism investigations. It is unlikely that the FBI would be similarly hesitant to active received information that U.S. law enforcement officials were actively linked to terrorist groups like Al-Qaeda or ISIS, or to criminal organizations like street gangs or the mafia. Yet many of the white supremacist groups investigated by the FBI have longer and more violent histories than these other organizations. The federal response to known connections of law enforcement officers to white supremacists and far-right militant groups has been strikingly insignificant. All right, so I just wanted to read some of that article. I mean, it's very, very long. If any of you guys want to go check it out, just go to the brennancenter.org, and it's called Hidden in Plain Sight. All right, is the name of that article. So, and I wanted to read some of that because the thing is, a lot of times you'll have people that, will say like, oh man, there's no racism, or oh, you really think a cop would really want to do harm to a black person just because they're black? Absolutely. You know what I'm saying? Of course, I'm not saying that's across the board. You know what I'm saying? But it's a huge enough problem that the FBI did a very long assessment about it in '06. They did another assessment, looks like in I think 2017, and nothing's nothing really changed in that span, right? And as you can see, like they're talking about in this article from 2020, there's really no major uh, things in place for them to really identify who's a part of these groups, and there's really no concerted effort to just weed them out and say, hey, well, if it's your right to be a part of that group, you know what I'm saying? Okay, that's fine. But just like as if you were doing health, giving someone health care, if you're a part of a group that is anti anything, let's just say you're a part of a group that's anti Asian, you can't stand Asians or whatever. Yeah, I don't think you need to be in healthcare. You know what I'm saying? Even if you say, oh, well, no, I'll join that group because of, another reason or whatever, but this group historically is anti Asian, why should you be allowed to work in a hospital? I mean, just like make it make sense, right? So, and the thing is, the problem. Well, I'm not gonna say the problem, but one of the problems is, we even have people that look like us that will sit up here and regurgitate that bull stuff. Like, oh man, oh y'all just need to, do better. And some people do. We gonna get into that. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, I'm not saying that there's no black crime, but one of the reasons I'm doing this video is to show you guys that everybody does crime. Everybody does crime. All right. All communities have a criminal element. The thing is, they're not targeted the way we're targeted. It is and just wait, because I know it's some people that they want to probably discount some of the stuff I'm saying, but just keep watching, just keep watching. So, but at the end of the day, the FBI, they're not historically a friend of ours. You know what I'm saying? They're not historically a friend of our community. When you really dive into their history and the things they were involved in, as far as uh, taking out some of our leaders and putting surveillance on them, and all the stuff that the FBI has done. So if the FBI can come out and tell the truth, it's a problem. It's a major problem if the FBI is coming out, telling the truth. So, um, and another thing, I want to make the point too that sometimes when you see people, because I know, probably it was probably a couple weeks ago it kind of started to die down a little bit, but you were seeing even a lot of people that look just like us that would be saying some off the wall, anti-black stuff, right? And what the way I look at it now is, if you're anti-black, you're anti-American. Full stop. It, there's just no way you can be pro-America, America first, or anything like that if you're anti-black. Like the people who literally built the country, like let's be real, we've been here since the beginning. If you don't know that there was black people already here before the slave trade and all of that, you can do that research on your own. But and not only that, but the people that fought for the America that we live in today. All right, we wouldn't have fairness. Justice wouldn't be justice. Of course, it's still not justice. Justice. The justice system needs a whole reform, but fairness, justice, and everything like that we were always fighting for, and that's what I want us to know, that we have to, especially in today's day and age, you got to be rooted. You have to be rooted in your resilience. You know what I'm saying? You got to be rooted in your peace. You know what I'm saying? Everything that we fall for and that we're about. You know what I'm saying? That's just a part of our spirit. You know what I'm saying? And again, we'll dive even deeper into that. But with all the propaganda that's coming out, you just got to be grounded. You really have to be grounded and don't fall for these psyops, because that's what it is. It's a lot of psyops out there, and it's there for a reason. It's there for a reason, and part of the reason why a lot of that propaganda they put out there is to excuse the harm that they want to continue to do to us. You know what I'm saying? If you're constantly putting propaganda on a certain group of people, it makes it easier for you know law enforcement officers to do what they do, and then also for the general public to kind of just be okay with certain things, right? But in reality, and we're gonna go through this too. In reality, you can put propaganda on any group. You could put propaganda on any group. Okay. Um, we're going to get into the crimes that a lot of other groups commit, that they do get caught for, but they're not targeted. So they can kind of skirt certain things, right? So let's move on. I'm going to show you guys something else on the computer. All right. Now, actually, I do want to say this before I flip it to the computer. I'm going to go ahead and explain it. So, one thing that a lot of people don't know, of course, some of you guys do have the information, but some people don't know that private prisons, there's a lot of private prisons in the United States, right? Now, those private prisons, they have a minimum bed count that they have to make sure. It's really the government. The government is supposed to make sure that there's a certain amount of prisoners in these prisons. Okay. Does that even sound okay? You know what I'm saying? That sounds like some of the most inhumane sugar honey iced tea that I'd have ever heard. Like, how are you guaranteeing a prison population? So either way, let me show you guys. All right, so this is straight from Gemini AI. I know a lot of people like Chat GPT. I use Chat sometimes too, but I don't know, for some reason I just I've been using Gemini for um, longer, and I just got more used to it. So either way, so the question I asked, like, do some prisons have a minimum amount of beds that they have to have filled, right? So, yes, many prisons have clauses in their contracts with state and local governments that require a minimum number of beds to be filled, often referred to as bed guarantees or lockup quotas. Prevalence. Studies have shown that a significant number of private prison contracts in the U.S. include these minimum occupancy clauses. Percentage. These requirements often mandate that the government must maintain occupancy levels frequently ranging from 80 to 100% of the prison's capacity. Financial penalty. If the government fails to provide enough inmates to meet the guaranteed minimum, they are financially penalized, effectively paying the private corporation for the empty beds. The existence of these clauses have been criticized because it can create a financial incentive for governments to maintain or even increase carceration rates to avoid paying penalties, potentially running counter to public policy goals of reducing prison populations or implementing system reform. All right. So, as you can see, there's a lot of prisons that have a minimum bed count, or whatever they call it, right? Um, and the government basically is supposed to guarantee that they have enough inmates to meet those thresholds, right? How is, again, like I said, how is that? That is inhumane, in my opinion. That is one of the most inhumane things that a government, especially the United States government, we're supposed to be about, liberty, justice, and all that type of stuff. And based on, because it's money related, right? Based on money and smashing down on, in my opinion, the black community, because who like, again, who's targeted? Who's targeted the most to be locked up in prison is us, right? So when people, say, oh, well, they're not, targeting your community, you're just violent. You know what I'm saying? This, that, or the fifth. How can you justify the government saying, okay, we're going to guarantee that a certain amount of inmates will be in prison or locked up? Okay. Because again, not only does that, um because another thing that it is like those corporations, the people that are investing in prisons and stuff like that, that gives them incentive to also vote for certain things, and also certain policies. They implement, like, mandatory minimums and stuff like that. They want those things, right? They want those things. They want longer sentences. Okay. They don't really want people to be rehabilitated. They want you coming right back in. Now, the way I feel about it is if you're not somebody who's inhumane, you actually care about human life, you care about having a better America, that would be the goal of people that invest in prisons. That should be their goal. Is I mean, because you can still make money, right? Now, the money may be different, but you can still make money. But if when people do certain crimes and you bring them in and you say, okay, cool, you did this, you need to pay your debt to society, but we're going to give you skills, job training, all these things. And I understand that to a degree, some, prisons do have these programs, but the thing is, can you actively work with corporations? It's like, okay, we're going to hire these people. You know what I'm saying? We need to, make sure that they actually have a job when they get out so they don't have to go back to criminality, especially for people who did non-violent crimes. You know what I'm saying? Let's say you know, I don't know, maybe you had a drug crime or whatever, but it wasn't a violent thing, right? You went to jail over some drugs. Maybe you did some fraud or whatever, and maybe depending on what you did, you can't, work around certain things. Like, hey, uh, if you did a financial crime, maybe you don't work, with money, you don't work at the register or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like, there may be certain things that, certain limitations, and maybe it's for just a certain period of time, but at the end of the day, we we live in a society where there's a lot of people who are just, again, like I said, they are inhumane. Like, I just don't know, just understand how that's even legal. That should be illegal for them to be able to say we're going to guarantee a certain amount of people in this prison. My thing is, hey, if you want to invest in that, that's fine, but guarantee, why would I guarantee you a certain amount of prisoners? That's just asinine. And when I say that they, also could, make money doing things, I mean, the as far as like reforming things. Okay, let's say, in my opinion, if you're not really doing a violent crime, um, I feel like there's other ways that we can go about you having punishment. You know what I'm saying? Certain crimes, right? Maybe you get house arrest, maybe, with, some community service. And then, you do certain courses and classes. Now, if you don't want to, do that, or you choose not to do that, or you do the crime again, then yeah, prison time. You know what I'm saying? Because you didn't learn. We tried to uh, do the humane thing. You know what I'm saying? And say, hey, people slip up, especially um, with uh, all the targeting and the sabotaging we've done to the black community. You know what I'm saying? And I'm just, of course, I'm talking about prisoners in general, but right now I'm saying us, you know what I'm saying? Like, with all the targeting that they've done to us and the sabotage that they've done, burning down our towns, flooding our towns. And yeah, you may say, well, yeah, but that was a long time ago. But yeah, the generational wealth that you guys destroyed, that still affects the community till this day. And don't think that there's not still sabotage going on. Oh, it definitely is. It's definitely still sabotage going on because, you know, you just discriminate on giving us certain loans. You know what I'm saying? You start putting certain injunctions and things on black owned businesses, and you have the police start harassing people that go to the business. When they leave, you pull people over, and it becomes like a nuisance at that point for people to even want to go. Trust me, you can look these stories up. Don't just listen to me. Don't just listen to what I'm saying. It's still happening till this day. So um, there's never been uh, a major overhaul of the criminal justice system, and I think there needs to be one. And one of the things that I want to say too is, especially to the youth, definitely to the youth, and honestly, people, just young people, period, 20s, 30s, 40s, young voices right now is very important. Um, and I say that because, and when I'm gonna get back to the youth, which is like the teenagers and things like that, but the 20s, 30s, and 40s, like people in that range, um, if you want to, this is the thing, a lot of times we kind of look to older people, for certain things or whatever. But at the end of the day, this is our time now. You know what I'm saying? If you in your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, this is our time. Because think about it. The guy who, was unalive a few weeks ago, um, he was 31 years old. That's pretty young. You know what I'm saying? He wasn't 51, 61, 71. He was 31 years old, right? He had a lot of people listening to him. A lot of people listening to him. So that is why it's very important for, uh, say, if you have children, you need to be, one thing that I always, or that I'm really realizing is that we really need to be in a lot of different sectors. And I'm not saying that we're not already in certain sectors, but I mean, a lot more of us need to be in certain sectors like politics for sure. We definitely need more people in politics. The criminal justice system. I mean, we need more, police, judges, all of that. And but the thing is, for you guys is bringing up youth right now. You got to be instilling the right values in them, though. You have to be instilling the right values because some of us get in those positions and we it's just as bad. You know what I'm saying? So we have to make sure we're instilling the right values into the youth, and um, we need a lot of reform, criminal justice for sure. We need a lot of things reformed, and we need people that are gonna make, how do I say, just common sense decisions. You know what I'm saying? A lot of these laws need to be tweaked and things like that. Like again, like how is it okay for you to build a prison and say, okay, I need you to, guarantee me a certain amount of inmates? Like that's asinine. All right. And of course, we're going to get into all the sentencing disparities and the wrongful convictions and, all of that stuff. All of that ties into that. You know what I'm saying? Obviously, there's, just racism, raw racism as well. But, if you're going to target a certain community, you know what I'm saying? They not gonna target their own community. They gonna target us for having those minimum amounts of inmates in those prisons. So again, it's our time. You know what I'm saying? My goal, because like I say, we need a lot more of us doing X, Y, Z. My goal is entrepreneurship. You know what I'm saying? That's what I'm trying to push. Anybody that want to listen to me about that, but I really want to make sure we got more of us in entrepreneurship. Specifically, I know about real estate. I've been doing that for quite a while now, so I can give knowledge on that. And that's what I want to do. Honestly, I think that's a part of my calling. But we can't do it all. You know what I'm saying? So these videos won't be something that I'll be doing a lot of. You know what I'm saying? I will be more so doing real estate content. That's my bag, right? But if you have a voice and you want to, obviously if you're talking truth to power, you know what I'm saying, that's we need more of that. We need more of that, and we need more people getting in certain positions, not just talking about it. We need people talking about it and dropping that knowledge, but we also need people in positions that can make some changes for real. And again, people, when they say speaking truth to power, you can speak truth to power, but there's a lot of people doing other things as well, because you can speak evil to power. All right. You can speak division to power. You can speak violence to power. There's a lot of negative things that you can speak to power as well, and people are doing that. Okay. So that's one reason why we need more people speaking truth to power out here. All right, so before I actually go on back to the computer, let me do a brief explanation. So, um, I basically want to show you guys how the system will. Okay, you can do a crime that somebody else does the same exact crime of another race, and you'll be charged differently, right? That's another reason how sentence, disparity and, just us being in a large population in prison, that's how sometimes that works out as well. So it's like, hey, you go and I don't know, I don't even want to name the crime, but you go and do a crime again, the same exact crime as somebody else. But when I say they charge you different, it's like, okay, maybe you did a financial crime and you know, the other person is charged with, I don't know, theft or something like that, or petty theft. I don't know, right? But you get charged with fraud and wire fraud and all this extra stuff or whatever. So they're laying it on you. You know what I'm saying? They're stacking those sentences, if you will, stacking those charges, if you will, right? So that's what I want to show you guys next. All right. So, yes, studies consistently show that black defendants are often charged with crimes that carry harsher penalties and ultimately receive longer prison sentences than white defendants for the same or similar type of crimes. The disparity occurs at multiple stages of the criminal justice process. Initial charging decisions. One of the most significant drivers of the difference in sentencing length is the prosecutor's decision on what to charge. More severe charges. Prosecutors are more likely to charge black defendants with crimes that are more severe than those charged against similarly situated white defendants for the same conduct. Mandatory minimums. Research, particularly in the federal system, indicates that prosecutors file charges that carry mandatory minimum sentences significantly more against black defendants than white defendants. A mandatory minimum sentence severely limits a judge's discretion and guarantees a long prison term. All right. Even when accounting for factors like the severity of the crime and prior criminal history, a racial disparity in sentencing remains. Longer sentences, black male defendants in the federal system have been found to receive sentences that are on average substantially longer. Example, 10 to 20% longer in various studies than those of similarly situated white male defendants. Reduced likelihood of probation. Black defendants are also less likely to receive a non-prison sentence such as probation compared to white defendants. Sentence reductions. White defendants are often more likely to receive a larger reduction in sentence time for providing substantial assistance to the prosecution, cooperating witnesses, than black and Latino defendants. These disparities reflect the accumulated effects of discretionary decisions made by police, prosecutors, and judges throughout the system. All right, so moving right along, studies from the National Registry of Exonerations show stark racial disparities in wrongful convictions, indicating that black people are significantly more likely to be falsely convicted than white people. All right. I'm going to just go right into the numbers. All right. So drug crimes were 19 times more likely to be wrongfully convicted. Murder, 7.5 times more likely to be wrongly convicted. Sexual assault, 8 times more likely to be convicted. And that's black people are approximately X times more likely to be wrongly convicted than white people. All right. So versus our white counterparts, that's crazy. That is absolutely crazy. Okay. The risk of wrongful conviction for an innocent black defendant is particularly high when the victim is white. Example, in sexual assault cases involving a black male defendant and white female victim, the innocent black man is about 6 times more likely to be wrongly convicted than his white counterpart. All right. While the exoneration rate is difficult to quantify as a percentage of all false convictions because the total number of false convictions is unknown, which is exactly true. So you just have to, when you look at the exoneration rate and how difficult it is to be exonerated, you will know that there's plenty of people that's still locked up with false convictions. Many of them have died in prison, and we'll never know. But the data on exonerated individuals clearly illustrates the disproportionate impact on black Americans. Share of exonerees. Black people make up only about 13.6% of the population. They always like to throw out, oh, you 13% and you do X, Y, Z, right? We're 13% of the population, but account for over 50%, 52 to 53% of the people exonerated in the U.S. since '89. Time to exoneration. Wrongfully convicted black people spend significantly longer in prison before being exonerated. For murder cases, the average time black exonerees spent incarcerated before release is several years longer than for white exonerees. The factors contributing to these disparities often include police misconduct, which is present in a higher percentage of black exoneree cases, flawed eyewitness identification, and racial bias within the judicial system. Spewing that, you know, the black community, you're violent, you're this, you're that, right? But you never hear those same people talk about those numbers. You never hear them say, well, yeah, but black people are 7 times more likely to be convicted of murder and it's a false conviction or a wrongful conviction. 19 times, what was it, 19 times for drug crimes, 19 times more likely to be wrongly convicted, 8 times more for sexual assault. You know what I'm saying? Like all these different crimes, we have a very much so higher percentage of being wrongly convicted, and we have been consistently the most exonerated. You know what I'm saying? They never bring that up because it goes against their narrative, right? And is you just this is the thing. You want to be able to know these things because when you see certain things from people or hear certain things from people, you got to be able to have the knowledge to either A, combat the bull stuff that they're talking, or B, not be psychologically broken. So you already know, because this is the thing. I work with a lot of different people. I do business with a lot of different people, rather. You know what I'm saying? I do business with a lot of different people. I'm cool with a lot of different people. I'm friends with a lot of different people. But the thing is, a lot of people like to walk around with blinders on as if we don't live in a certain system. We do. We do. You just keep it a buck. And I know some of you people that are like, well, I'm not black and I don't have an issue. I'm not talking about y'all. I'm not talking about y'all. But the thing is, it's enough. It's enough people out there that believe in the system, that practice the system. Uh, they've infiltrated law enforcement. And again, I'm gonna go over a lot of different things. I know I've been on this video for over 40 minutes now. It's gonna be long because I got so much stuff to tackle. One thing you're gonna see is it's not even just the police departments. They're in those three-letter agencies as well. All right. So all you people that want to, come around us talking about, oh, well, y'all just need to do this, or oh, y'all just need to do that, or it's the fatherless homes and blah 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 blah. Let me tell you something. Focus on your community. All right. Focus on getting those people out of law enforcement that literally have white supremacist ties. They have ties to all these groups that are, what do they call them? Domestic terrorist groups. All right. And occasionally they bust some of them, you know what I'm saying, and they do something about it, only if they're really about to go do some heinous things for the most part, right? But they're not really doing anything about that stuff, not on no major scale, not on no major scale. Then because my thing is they would have been weeding those people out as soon as that assessment came out. Because how can you be fair and partial, all that stuff? How can you be fair in your police work and your criminal justice work if you literally are a part of those groups? And honestly, some of what was going on and is going on as far as the propaganda that's coming out and people, eh, a lot of it, the people that like on social media, because I know some of y'all was seeing some things and you were just like, all right, block. You know what I'm saying? All right, I'm cool. I'm unfriend or whatever. But and I'm not gonna lie, I used to be that way too. But sometimes sometimes you gotta operate from a system of strategy and not emotion. All right. For me, because I remember going all the way back to, let's say, Trayvon Martin. I would be seeing certain things about this 17-year-old young man, kid, because he was still a kid. He was a teenager. You know what I'm saying? He was, I'll call him a young man, but the thing is, we get, they put us in that adult space a lot of times in order to justify certain things, right? But I saw a lot of nasty things from people that I knew. You know what I'm saying? That hey, I might have worked with them, might have went to school with them, and it was just like, wow, you know what I'm saying? And yeah, I was on that too, like block, you know what I'm saying, unfriend, whatever. But I think it was probably like a few years after that when I would start seeing certain things. I try to analyze, to a degree, And again, it's part of strategy. You know what I'm saying? Just kind of like knowing certain things. I kind of hold on to those friends. Not saying that we're friends, you know what I'm saying? Because I don't need to be friends with nobody that's anti-black, aka anti-American. I'm no, full stop. I don't need to be cool with you if you're rock with whatever political party you want to rock with. I can speak for myself on that. I can't speak for everybody on that. But I don't care what political party you rock with. But once I realize you anti-black, then I can move around. I don't really need to be in that space, right? But when I say friends, like friends on Facebook, or still follow them on Instagram or whatever, and the reason why for me is because I want to know. I want to know who's liking these posts that are anti-American. You know what I'm saying? I want to know, what are they doing years later? You know what I'm saying? Because these people might end up getting into law enforcement. They may end up getting into politics. They may end up getting into the school system. You know what I'm saying? Um, and so some of the things you might just make, let's go ahead and screenshot it, you know what I'm saying, for, safekeeping for maybe a rainy day, because you just never know. You never know where these people are going to go. And then, sometimes I just want to analyze people too, as far as like, what are you about? What are you about? You know what I'm saying? I can just silently kind of figure that out, because there's people. Let me tell you something. There's people all the way back from Mike Brown and all those some of those different cases. And yeah, I still I still remember. I don't forget. I don't forget nothing. And but the thing is, how you have to move with those people going forward. You have to, like, okay, well, uh, most likely, you probably wouldn't go hang out and stuff like that, right? But for me, I also look at it because I mean, keep it a buck. There's a guy. He's a pretty high profile guy in real estate, and he's been saying a lot of anti-American things. You know what I'm saying? Um, and I don't think he was at first, but I think it was like sometime last year I noticed it, right? But he does real estate events and stuff like that. But so now I know, like, okay, hey, I don't need to go to those events. You know what I'm saying? Why would I do that when you're anti-American? You're anti-black, anti-American, and some people will confuse you because they'll post some anti-black stuff, and then then they'll post some stuff that's not anti-black, and it's like, it's confusing. But I'm gonna just go ahead and put you in that category because you've said enough. It's been more than one post where you're, and I'm not just talking about, hey, I disagree with something you say, but like we know when people are anti-black. You know what I'm saying? And so I know, like, okay, hey, am I gonna do business with this person? Am I gonna go to events for, with these people? Am I gonna, support anything of their, you know what I'm saying? You have to know how you're gonna move with these things, and for me, it's like, okay, I'm probably not, well, not even probably not. I'm not going to support an event that this guy is doing. You know what I'm saying? Why would I pay to go to his event and he's anti-American? That don't make no sense. Um, So, that, just a lot of different things like that. For me, I just try to sometimes move in a position of strategy and not emotion. So, the next thing I want to get into. All right, so I gotta tackle the immigrants. I feel like this is probably the perfect time. Since I just brought up the guy that he's in real estate and some of the stuff I've seen. Him posting and whatever. So I guess it's time for me to move on to the immigrant section of the video, right? Um, because and the thing is, I know sometimes we'll see certain things from people, um, you know, that look like us, and they're anti-American. They say anti-black things, right? I want to be honest with you guys because I know my black American people. I know my black Americans, and a lot of the people that you'll see making those posts are not black American. Or they were born in America, but their parents or their grandparents are not black American. They weren't born in America, and so they just have a different spirit and a different vibe than what we have. It's just different. You know what I'm saying? Um, and it's just to get on that real quick. Because I'm gonna keep it real. I got friends throughout the diaspora. People that's not black American that, hey, I go to I fight for. You know what I'm saying? I get him the shirt off my back if I have to. So again, I'm not talking about them. The thing is, or I'm talking about y'all. You know what I'm saying? If y'all see this, but the thing is, it's enough of a problem. It's enough of a problem that it has to be addressed. It just has to be addressed. You know what I'm saying? I personally believe in solidarity across the diaspora. You know what I'm saying? But in recent times, a lot of Black Americans have woken up. Now, I have been privy to this stuff probably for the last 10 years, right? Because when I had a duplex at one point. It was about 10 years ago, and I had it was a 2 bedroom duplex. And so before I really got heavy into real estate, I was house hacking. Before I really knew what house hacking was, I rented out my extra bedroom to a few different people at different times, right? I had like 3 different tenants over the course of me living in that duplex. But um, my very no, it was my second roommate was an African, and I think I can't. I'm gonna be honest. I can't remember if he was from Kenya or from Ghana. But that was when I realized, like, okay, a lot of, or I'll just say this: there's a decent amount of people from the continent, because I thought it was only the Africans that they don't like Black Americans. They don't like Black Americans, right? I asked him about like just America in general, and he let me know, hey, he didn't really care for America like that. He liked the opportunities that it brought to him, and he was saying how he's just gonna go back home. A lot of them say that, but they don't really go back home. But at the end of the day, uh, his whole thing was, hey, Americans are rude, they're disrespectful, especially Black Americans. They're disrespectful to their parents, and he just went on this whole tirade, and he kind of went in on us or whatever. And so I just started to realize, as I went on in life, and I would talk to other people specifically from the continent, um, sometimes I would get that. Not all of them, but it was a decent amount of them that would, try to hit us with some bull stuff, talking about we don't have no culture. We have the most innovative culture that is global. Everybody is mimicking us. Like, I'm not gonna say everybody, but it's a good amount of people across this globe who emulates Black Americans and Black American culture. So, but that's that part, right? So, what I want to talk about is the household income thing that people like to bring up, right? Um, there's a few different reasons why I can't rock with the household income stats like that. Um, let me start with this. So, this is something else you can look up on Chat GPT, Gemini, Google, whatever, right? Do your research, because it ain't just me saying this. There's literally studies and whatever that will tell you the truth about this, right? When it comes to household income, because that's the stat that a lot of people like to throw in our face and say, well, this community's doing better, or that community's doing better, or whatever, and Black Americans, y'all on the bottom or whatever, okay? When it comes to immigrant households, a lot of y'all live with everybody from your family. And I'm talking about all your extended family and all that. Like, it'd be a lot of people living under one roof. We don't live like that typically. We just don't live like that. All right? And it's not a dig. It's no disrespect, but we just don't live like that. And I'm honestly, it's not even just Black American culture. That's American culture. Okay? Black people and white people in America, we don't typically live with 30 people under one roof. All right. Um, it's there's just a difference there, right? And I'll give you guys some real life examples from my life. You know what I'm saying? That stuff that I've seen, people that I know. Um, so before I bought my house, I lived in a complex that was majority East Indian. I'm gonna say probably about 90% of my complex was East Indian. All right, maybe 5% Asian, and I always kind of chuckle or go back and forth when I say that, because I'm like, well, Indians are from the continent of Asia too, but we think of Asian as more Chinese and Japanese, Malaysian, all that stuff. But um, either way, these were more South Asian, East Indian people that lived in the community, right? Um, a lot of the apartments were multiple people living in a one bedroom apartment or even a two bedroom apartment. It was way too many people. For example, I'm gonna just give you the example of the people that lived across the hall from me. All right, nice group of people, really nice group of people. The father was cool. You know, I had conversations with him occasionally. Their little daughter, she was about 2 years old. She had a little ball she would play with occasionally. If I was out there, I kind of, you know, tossed a little ball, kicked a little ball back and forth with her. These were nice people, but I just have to keep it real as far as how they, were living. Okay, you had the grandmother, you had the dad, you had the mom, you had the sister. So I'm at four adults right now. Now the the brother, his adult brother, he stayed over there for a short period, maybe like 6 months or so, right? And then they had their daughter. All right, so they had a one bedroom apartment with with 4 to 5 adult working age people at any time living in this one bedroom apartment. Okay? And that was the norm over there. You know what I'm saying? You would have 4 to 5 adults living in a one bedroom apartment. That was just what was going on. Um, where I live now. All right. I'm gonna be honest. There's not a lot of immigrants over here for whatever reason. Um, it's white, black, but it's not really a lot of other groups of people here. But there is a African family that lives in my neighborhood. Right, they live on my block. Um, and they don't speak either. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, dang, like most times when I you see a black family or whatever, like, hey, what's up? How y'all doing or something like that. You know what I'm saying? But they don't speak to me, whatever. But at the end of the day, um, they have they have 2 cars in their driveway. There's a car in front of the house, and they have three. It's always at least three. Sometimes it's four. Maybe that's a visitor, but it's 3 cars on the side. So there's 6 cars that is always at this home. All right. It's a 3 bedroom house. So at least 6 people with the driver's license, uh, particularly adults. You know what I'm saying? Maybe one of them is a teenager, but typically these are adults. They're all living in this one house. It's a lot of people. I didn't try to count, how many people come in and out of this house, but it's a lot of people coming in and out of that house that live in that house. They are the only house on the block that has all them many cars. That many cars out, you know what I'm saying, parking there. You know what I'm saying? So again, I'm just giving real world examples, okay? I got a friend. I'm not gonna say her name or anything. I haven't talked to her in a while, but she's cool people, right? Um, when she moved into her house, like it was her and her whole family. Like, what I'm saying? She always talks about her house or whatever, but it's her mom, her dad, her sister, her brother, and her sister has kids. I don't know about her brother, but um, and the grandma lives there as well, an African family, right? Um, when they bought the house, the mom and dad was divorced. They weren't even they're not even together. Uh, they're not in a relationship. Their marriage is over with. But they bought a house together. And again, I'm not knocking anybody's strategy or anything. Hey, if that's what y'all want to do to get a house, you know what I'm saying? And you know, maybe you save up and you get your own place. But a lot of times, that what I'm seeing is that's not the case. Not across the board. Sometimes that's your strategy. Y'all save up and then y'all. I'm not knocking that. But all I'm just saying is when y'all throw out household income stats, we just don't live like that. You know what I'm saying? We just don't, because our household income is based off of one person, two people, maybe three people. You know what I'm saying? But for the most part, we don't. When it comes to adults living in the house, now, you have certain situations where, you know, your parent, or both of your parents get older and they have to come and live with you. You know, maybe your brother, your sister, they're going through hard times and they come and stay with you for some months or whatever. But like, no, we don't go typically buy it's eight relatives, we all go buy a house together. That's just not how Americans typically operate. We want our privacy, we want our space, we just, that's how we prefer to live. All right. So, another thing about these household income stats, I always thought, you know what I'm saying? Before I really was like, okay, I'm not going to read into this bull stuff, right? I always thought that they were actually sampling people's paychecks or maybe even their tax returns, right? Because, when you get a job, they have that thing where you can fill out, and I think it may be voluntary or whatever, but, the thing where you fill out where you put your race and, your gender and, all that stuff or whatever. I thought they was using that and then using your income because all this stuff technically they could verify the real numbers, you know what I'm saying? Just based on that, you know? Um, but no, these are based on a survey. The household income stats are based on a survey. They do a survey of 60 to, I think it was 60 to like 78,000 people is what they compile. And they just, ask them their, income. They don't verify. You know what I'm saying? So somebody could be like, oh, well, I make 62, but I'm going to say 70. You know what I'm saying? So it's not really an accurate stat, you know what I'm saying? In my opinion, you know what I'm saying? Maybe I'm not trying to act like I'm a research, somebody who does, surveys. I don't know the official title for that or whatever. I'm not trying to say I'm a research analyst or whatever it's called. But you know what I'm saying? That kind of makes you pump the brakes, in my opinion. That's going to make you pump the brakes a little bit on spouting those statistics, you know what I'm saying? And it's a very small group of American households that they are actually surveying for those stats. So just keep that in mind. Don't again, a lot of things is propaganda, you know what I'm saying, to and I say that's propaganda too. Yep. Yep. Because again, uh they know that people can just say whatever, number one, and then number two, you're not really verifying the data. So we don't know that, those numbers are accurate. All right. All right. So moving on into um, every community does crime. All right. That's what we're about to get into. All right. And so I'm going to start with the Asian community. All right. We're going to start there. One of the things is, we always talk about how much, drugs are being funneled into the country from, Mexico or just South America or Latin America in general, right? But a lot of people, some of y'all know, but a lot of people don't know that a lot of drugs, a lot of drugs are funneled into our country from Asia. Okay? So let's get into it. All right. While the vast, while Asian countries play a significant role in the global illegal drug trade, the vast majority of illicit drugs available in the U.S. are trafficked overland across the southwest border from Mexico and are ultimately sourced from Mexico or South America. You see, even AI sometimes will get to explaining, but at the end of the day, I'll keep reading. So, however, Asian countries, particularly China and India, are crucial suppliers for a different part of the drug supply chain: precursor chemicals used to manufacture synthetic drugs. So that's why I was saying they be splaining, because yeah, a lot of drugs definitely come from Mexico and South America. However, there's certain drugs that you can't they need to get the precursor chemicals from China and India in order to, complete the process, to actually make it into a usable uh, drug, if you will, right? So, um, and I'm just saying, explaining, trying to say, you know, they play a significant role, but the vast majority come from Mexico, of course. Which I would say this. I'm not going to argue that, but again, they're just they're explaining a little bit. So, all right. So, major source for precursor chemicals: Asia, synthetic opioids, fentanyl, and methamphetamine. China and increasingly India are the primary global source for the precursor chemicals, raw materials that Mexican drug cartels use to manufacture massive amounts of synthetic drugs like fentanyl and methamphetamine in Mexico. Finished products, direct drug trafficking. China was previously a more direct source for finished fentanyl and fentanyl-related substances, often trafficked through international mail. While this still occurs, the trend has shifted, with Mexican cartels now relying on Chinese and India precursor chemicals to produce the final product in clandestine labs in Mexico. All right. The primary source of the major illicit drugs seized in the U.S. are fentanyl and methamphetamine, largely manufactured in Mexico using precursor chemicals primarily from Asia and India. The final drugs are then smuggled across the U.S. Mexico border. Cocaine, almost all cocaine in the U.S. is sourced from Colombia, Peru, and Bolivia in South America and is primarily trafficked through Mexico and Central America to the U.S. border. Heroin. Most U.S. heroin is sourced from Mexico, with South America heroin also present. The U.S. drug threat is dominated by substances smuggled across the U.S. Mexico border. All right. The main source for trafficked drugs, cocaine, heroin, and the primary manufacturing and trafficking point for synthetic drugs, fentanyl, and meth. Asia, China, India. The crucial source for precursor chemicals that fuel the synthetic drug crisis. All right, yes, Asian and Mexican criminal organizations have extensive and criminal working relationships, particularly in the trade of synthetic drugs like fentanyl and methamphetamine. This cooperation is primarily structured as a supply chain partnership that focuses on two key areas. All right, precursor chemical, Asia to Mexico, China, and India are predominant global sources of the precursor chemical raw ingredients needed to manufacture fentanyl and methamphetamine. Mexican cartels, Sinaloa and CJ&G, are the primary clients, importing these chemicals to produce the finished drugs in clandestine labs in Mexico. Facilitation. Chinese chemical companies, including some operating legally as dual-use businesses, knowingly sell these precursors to Mexican cartels. Some even advertise their ability to clear customs in Mexico and in Spanish. All right. Chinese money laundering organizations have become a key player in helping Mexican cartels repatriate their illicit profits. The process, Mexican cartels generate a massive amount of U.S. cash from drug sales. They partner with CMLOs who collect the bulk cash in U.S. cities like L.A. and then use sophisticated underground banking systems to transfer the value back to the cartels in Mexico. This is highly efficient for the cartels, as CMLOs offer an effective way to move enormous amounts of cash. It also benefits wealthy Chinese nationals who are looking to move money out of China to circumvent currency controls. Drug for commodity trade. Some sources indicate that Mexican cartels are increasingly relying on the trade of illicit commodities, such as certain poached wildlife from Mexico, to pay for the precursor chemicals supplied by Chinese brokers. Trafficking to other markets. Historically, the Sinaloa cartel also established ties with Asian organized crime like Chinese triads to secure meth precursor supply and explore cocaine markets in the Asia Pacific region. All right, so as you see, there's a lot of drugs that are coming out of Asia, or Asian countries, South Asian countries like India. And, the thing is, um, they're just not targeted like that. You know what I'm saying? But what you can do, you can, please, look up, some of these things too. You know what I'm saying? I'm using AI so you guys can see, that I'm just looking these things up and I'm not just saying things, right? But you can go on YouTube, you can see drug busts and money laundering busts in the Asian communities. A lot of times it's in LA, but trust me, it's happening in other cities as well. And they have busts in other cities as well for sure. But sometimes what is it with the model minority thing that they kind of got going on or whatever. But there's a lot of crime in the Asian community. The thing is, they're just not targeted. They're not targeted for it. Okay. Um, those massage parlors, us guys, we know what be going on in there. Like, not all of them for sure. Not all of them. I don't think they, all have that. Cause yeah, I've been to some and I'm like, I don't think that, that's going on here, right? But when you know. So, but in a lot of those businesses, and I'll put it like this: there's a good amount. I don't want to try to say a lot or the majority or anything because we don't really know that, but it's a good amount of them, or it's a good amount. Yeah, I'll put it like that. It's a good amount of them that are just money laundering fronts, right? So sometimes, just again, I'm specifically I'm talking to my community right now because it's so much propaganda out there that again it'll have you psychologically thinking a certain way, and maybe you'll go past a certain business or you hear certain communities or they're opening this company or this business da 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 or whatever. But the thing is, see, we're not really allowed to do organized crime like that. Okay, this is international organized crime. No, no, no. We don't have networks like that. And that's why, again, why I'm doing this video, because I want you guys to have the information. If you don't have it, I want you to have the information. So when these people, when people, period, I'm not trying to say any group specifically, when anybody that's anti-American, anti-black, they start spewing this bull stuff, you'll know that, like, wait, all these groups have criminality. They're not targeting them like us. You know what I'm saying? They operate and have all these money laundering fronts. They're shipping drugs from all these different places into our communities, and we're not involved with that. We're Black Americans. We're not sitting up here working with the cartel or any other group to ship drugs into China or India or anything like that. We don't do that. You know what I'm saying? We're not working with any group to ship drugs, human trafficking, ex trafficking, you know what I'm trying to say, women to different countries and stuff like that. We're not involved in that. So what I want us to do is make sure hold our W's because they want us to hold every single L. You know what I'm saying? They want us to hold on to it, even if it's somebody in, I don't know, Anchorage, Alaska. He's a black man, and I know it ain't many of us up there. I don't know why that popped in my head, but if a man in Anchorage, Alaska does some janky stuff, all black Americans are responsible. All black people are, responsible for it, especially us black Americans. We're responsible for it. If some guy in Kentucky or Alabama, he go do something janky, all the black community, oh, the black on black, all the black on white, or the black on this, black on that. Like it's all this, propaganda that we have to eat. And we're supposed to hold on to this stuff as if we're responsible for it, as if we're the only community that has criminals or has people involved in crime. Every community has people involved in crime. They're just not targeted the way we're targeted. All right? Make sure y'all keep that. Make sure y'all understand that. Make sure y'all understand that. Another thing on the Asian community. So I remember I met this Asian lady one time, right? And when I tell you, she lived with her parents, but when I tell you they like it wasn't a house, it wasn't a nice house. They had a freaking mansion. It was a gated mansion, and I mean it was exquisite. Okay, and I remember asking, like, well, what are you doing, all that or whatever, and she was like, "Are you a cop?" And I'm like, "Me? Hell no." You know what I'm saying? But no, she was like, "Are you a cop?" And I'm like, "No." But she was like, "Well, we're in the gaming business, right?" Well, me, I had a little naive moment right there because I was about to say gaming. Like, okay, so are you starting an arcade or like you developing a video game or what's going on? And before it escaped my mouth, it dawned on me, you got a gambling spot. Okay, okay, okay. You basically an illegal gaming room. You know what I'm saying? We call it a gambling spot. But yeah, she had an illegal gaming room, right? And I mean they were living great. All right. Well, I did a little bit of research. That's also kind of prevalent in the Asian community. All right. Um, Especially Vietnamese community. But you know that is prevalent, right? And again, um, just not targeted like that. But again, if you go and you ask AI, if you do a little bit of research, you know what I'm saying? Because my thing is, I don't always just rely on AI. It's always good to, find a few sources to just back up, and validate what you're researching. Um, but yeah, that's heavy in their community. All right. But that's just not so they don't. The thing is, when I say anybody can get hit with propaganda, anybody can get hit with propaganda, but it's us that is always getting hit with the propaganda. So if we wanted to constantly, like, this is the thing. One thing about us Black Americans, all right, I'm not saying to or not to, but what I'm trying to say here is that we've never really started a major propaganda pushback movement. We never did that. But if we wanted to, we could. We got the material. You know what I'm saying? But my thing is this, because my thing is I really don't want any community having to get propaganda. But if we constantly are the ones getting it, you know, what I'm saying? All I'm just saying is, we ain't never did no pushback on that. Um, y'all could constantly be getting hit. Let's just say if we're talking about the Asian community right now, right? We could just people, period, like, the powers that be or us or whatever, could constantly be like, oh man, all the drugs is coming from Asia, all the drugs is coming from India. Oh man, they're drug traffickers. They're Asian drug traffickers. You know what I'm saying? Like, because of how they do, oh, it's the black community, black on black crime, black violence, Asians, drug traffickers, money launderers, uh, uh, your massage parlors, which are, let's just call it what it is, prostitution. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Prostitutes, drug lords, gangsters, because you gotta be gangster to be in the drug business. That's gangster business. It's money and drugs and people, sometimes things happen, right? Um, and especially back in say like the 90s and stuff, if you look at some of the crimes in like Chinatown and stuff, oh, it was bad. It was gangster. You know what I'm saying? I think they were saying they even had secret tunnels and stuff. So people, like, they would do hits, and they just go on in that underground tunnel and disappear. And I was watching a video before where it was saying that's why there's a lot of unsolved crimes, and from like Chinatown and stuff like that, because they had all these underground tunnels and stuff where they would do stuff and disappear. You never know. You know what I'm saying? The police would be canvassing the neighborhood, but yeah, I'm underground, buddy. You know what I'm saying? So, um, but again, if we wanted to constantly, talk about Asian drug trafficking, the women in the massage parlors, you know what I'm saying, and all that stuff, and all that, because there's Asian gangs too. Don't get it twisted. Don't get it twisted. There's Asian gangs that are operating right here in the U.S. I ain't just talking about the triads. It's a bunch of them. Don't think that they don't have their gangs. All right. So anybody can get hit with propaganda. Anybody.